The windshield wipers fought a losing battle against the rain as I gripped the steering wheel tighter, my knuckles white against the worn leather. Each sweep revealed only more darkness, more road stretching endlessly ahead through the California hills. The audition callback letter sat in my passenger seat, already crumpled from how many times I'd grabbed it, read it, convinced myself it was real. "Come on, don't do this to me," I muttered to the dashboard as the engine made another concerning noise, a grinding whine that had been growing louder for the past 10 miles. The heating vents had given up an hour ago, leaving me shivering in my thin blazer. I'd dressed for LA meetings, not mountain storms. My phone showed 1 bar of signal, flickering like a dying heartbeat, and the GPS had lost connection 20 minutes back. The last sign I'd passed said, Silver Peak, 15 miles, but that felt like a lifetime ago. I should have taken the main highway. Should have left earlier. Should have gotten the car serviced like my roommate Jen had nagged me about for weeks. But the callback was tomorrow morning at 9, and this scenic route was supposed to cut 2 hours off my drive time. Supposed to. The engine's whine became a death rattle. No, 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 no. Steam erupted from under the hood, billowing white against the darkness. I managed to guide the sputtering car onto what passed for a shoulder, my heart hammering as the vehicle shuddered to a final, definitive stop. The sudden silence was deafening, broken only by the relentless percussion of rain against metal. I sat there for a moment, hands still clutching the wheel, trying to process this disaster. The callback that could change everything, the role I'd dreamed about since drama school, was slipping away with each passing second. I grabbed my phone. Still 1 bar. I could try calling a tow truck, except I had no idea where I actually was. The rain seemed to intensify, as if the universe was laughing at my predicament. I pulled my blazer tighter, though it did nothing against the cold seeping through the car's thin walls. Through the water-streaked windows, I could barely make out the shapes of trees pressing close to the road, their branches like grasping fingers in the lightning flashes. My phone lit up with Jen's text. "Almost there? You're killing that callback tomorrow, I can feel it." I typed back with fumbling fingers. "Car died. Middle of nowhere. Not sure I'll make it." The message failed to send. Of course it did. I tried the engine again, turning the key with desperate hope. Nothing. Not even a pathetic cough. Just the clicking sound of something very, very broken. I popped the hood, knowing I had zero mechanical knowledge, but feeling like I should at least look, like some heroic character in a movie who miraculously fixes their car through sheer determination and good lighting. The rain hit me like a physical force the moment I stepped outside, immediately soaking through my blazer and the thin blouse underneath. I stumbled to the front of the car, nearly slipping on the wet asphalt, and lifted the hood. Steam still rose from the engine, and I could see. Well, I could see a bunch of metal parts that meant absolutely nothing to me. I might as well have been looking at ancient hieroglyphics. Damn it! I slammed the hood shut, the sound swallowed by thunder. Back in the car, I was drenched, shaking, and very close to crying. The adrenaline that had carried me through the breakdown was fading, leaving only cold reality. I was stuck on an isolated road in a storm, in the middle of the night, with no way to call for help, and an audition that could change my life slipping further away with each minute. I tried my phone again. Still no signal. I opened the rideshare apps. No drivers available in this area. The map wouldn't even load properly. I was truly, completely stranded. That's when I saw the headlights. They appeared in my rearview mirror like twin moons cutting through the darkness, growing steadily brighter. My first instinct was relief. Saved. Immediately followed by every horror movie and true crime podcast I'd ever consumed. Isolated road, stranded woman, unknown vehicle approaching in the dead of night. I locked the doors, my heart suddenly racing for entirely different reasons. The vehicle, Some kind of large SUV from what I could make out, slowed as it approached, then pulled to a stop directly behind my car. The headlights were so bright I couldn't see anything beyond them, just blazing white light that made everything else disappear into shadow. The driver's door opened. A figure emerged, tall and broad-shouldered, silhouetted against the light like something from a fever dream. He wore a long coat that billowed slightly in the wind, and even from here, even through the rain-blurred rear window, there was something about the way he moved, controlled, purposeful, almost predatory. He approached my car with measured steps. I watched in the side mirror as he came closer, my thumb hovering over my phone's emergency call button, even though I doubted it would connect. He stopped beside my driver's window and knocked. Not aggressive, but firm. A command, not a request. I rolled the window down about 2 inches, just enough to hear him. "Car trouble?" His voice was deep, smooth, with an accent I couldn't quite place. European, maybe. Each word precisely formed. "It's fine," I lied, my voice embarrassingly shaky. "Tow truck is on the way." Through the gap in the window and the sheets of rain, I could make out more details now. Dark hair, slicked back from the rain, strong jawline, and eyes. Even in the poor light, I could see they were striking, pale gray like storm clouds. He was beautiful in the way that dangerous things often are. Beautiful like a blade. "Is that so?" He glanced at my phone in my hand, and something like amusement flickered across his features. "You have service out here? That's impressive. I rarely do." My lie exposed, I felt heat rise to my cheeks despite the cold. I was about to walk to the next town. "In this?" He gestured to the torrential rain. "That would be inadvisable. Silver Peak is 15 miles and the storm is worsening. You'd catch hypothermia before you made it 3 miles. He paused, studying me with those unsettling eyes. "I'm heading to my estate about 5 miles ahead. You can call for a proper tow from there, warm up, wait out the worst of the storm." Every instinct screamed stranger danger. "That's very kind, but I'll manage." "Will you?" He tilted his head slightly. "It's nearly midnight. This road sees perhaps 1 car per hour, if that. The temperature is dropping. Your vehicle is clearly dead, and you're already shivering." His tone wasn't unkind, just stating facts. Pride is admirable, but hypothermia is not. "I don't know you," I said, trying to sound firm rather than terrified. "No, you don't." He reached into his coat, and I tensed, but he only pulled out a business card, sliding it through the gap in my window. "Lancelot Ashford. The estate is called Thornfield Manor. You can look it up if your phone cooperates. I'm offering shelter from a storm. Nothing more sinister than that." I looked at the card. Expensive cardstock, embossed lettering. Just his name and a phone number. No business, no title. Something about that felt both more and less reassuring. "I appreciate it, but—" "You're an actress," he interrupted, and my blood ran cold. How did he know that? His slight smile suggested he'd caught my reaction. "The script on your passenger seat, the headshots visible in your back seat, the way you're dressed for a meeting despite the storm, and the absolute terror currently in your eyes suggests you're imagining every possible terrible scenario." He stepped back from the car. "I'm not going to force you. Wait here if you prefer. Freeze if you must. But my offer stands. 5 miles to warmth, working phones, and proper help." He turned and walked back toward his vehicle. I watched him go, my mind racing. He was right about everything. The cold, the isolation, the danger of staying here. But wasn't getting into a stranger's car in the middle of nowhere the first rule of what not to do? He paused at his door, looking back. "For what it's worth, if I meant you harm, we wouldn't be having this conversation." That should have been terrifying. Instead, it was oddly reassuring in its brutal honesty. And as another violent shiver ran through me, as I looked at my useless phone and my dead car and the endless empty road, I made a decision that was either very smart or incredibly stupid. I grabbed my bag, the callback letter, and got out of the car. The rain immediately plastered my hair to my face, and I was soaked through in seconds. I locked my car, a pointless gesture given its condition, and hurried toward the SUV. Lancelot stood by the passenger door, holding it open, rain sliding off him like he was made of something water couldn't touch. "Wise choice," he said as I climbed in. "That remains to be seen," I muttered. But he'd already closed the door and was walking around to the driver's side. The interior of the vehicle was warm, leather seats that probably cost more than 3 months of my rent. Classical music played softly from speakers I couldn't see. The dashboard glowed with subtle blue lights, and everything smelled of expensive cologne and rain-soaked wool. Lancelot settled into the driver's seat with fluid grace, water dripping from his coat onto the leather. He didn't seem bothered by it. He put the vehicle in gear and pulled smoothly back onto the road, the powerful engine barely audible. "I'm Lila," I said, because the silence felt oppressive. "Lila Chen. A pleasure, Lila Chen." He didn't look at me, keeping his eyes on the road ahead. "What's the audition? How did you—" I stopped. "Right, obvious. You have the look of someone carrying hope and terror in equal measure. What's the role?" I clutched my bag tighter. "Supporting lead in a new streaming series. Period drama. It's my first real callback for something this big." "And when is this audition?" "Tomorrow, 9 a.m. in Los Angeles." I checked my phone again. Still no signal. Which I'm now going to miss because my car died in the middle of nowhere. "Not necessarily. We'll call a car service from the estate. You can be in LA by morning if you leave within a few hours." "A car service? At midnight, in a storm, from the middle of nowhere?" I laughed, slightly hysterical. "Do you have any idea what that would cost?" He glanced at me then, just for a moment, and something in his expression made my breath catch. Cost is rarely an issue I concern myself with. The way he said it, so casual, so matter-of-fact, spoke of wealth I couldn't even imagine. I studied his profile as he drove. The strong nose, the sharp cut of his jaw, the way his hands rested on the steering wheel with absolute confidence. Everything about him screamed money and power. "What do you do?" I asked. "To afford not concerning yourself with cost?" His mouth quirked. "Various investments, business ventures. I inherited well and managed poorly until I learned to manage very well indeed." It was a non-answer, polished and smooth. Before I could push further, the road curved, and through the rain, I saw it. Thornfield Manor wasn't just an estate. It was a mansion, looming against the dark sky like something from a Gothic novel. Stone walls, multiple wings, windows glowing with warm light. The long driveway was lined with ancient trees, their branches forming a tunnel that made me feel like we were entering another world entirely. "Jesus," I breathed. "You live here?" "I do." He pulled into a circular drive in front of the main entrance, where covered archways provided shelter from the rain. Alone, mostly, along with my housekeeper and occasional staff. Mostly alone in a house the size of a small hotel? I stared up at the building. That's not creepy at all. That earned me an actual laugh, low and genuine. "I like my space. Come, let's get you inside before you catch your death." He was out and around to my door before I could move, opening it with the same old-fashioned courtesy. I stepped out under the covered archway, finally protected from the rain, and looked up at the massive wooden doors ahead of us. This is insane, I thought. Completely, utterly insane. But I was here now, and those doors were opening, warm light spilling out, and whatever else Lancelot Ashford was, He'd been right about one thing. Staying in my car would have been a slow death by freezing. I just had to hope that coming here wasn't a different kind of death entirely. Oh. The warmth hit me like a physical embrace as I stepped through the massive doors, and I couldn't suppress the full-body shiver that followed. My wet clothes clung to me uncomfortably, and I was suddenly very aware that I was dripping all over what looked like a marble floor that probably cost more than my entire apartment building. "Don't worry about the floor," Lancelot said, as if reading my thoughts. He shrugged out of his coat, revealing a black shirt and perfectly tailored pants underneath. Even soaked, he looked like he'd stepped out of a fashion magazine. "Loretta?" A woman appeared so quickly I wondered if she'd been waiting just out of sight. She was perhaps in her 50s, with silver-streaked dark hair, pulled into a neat bun, and sharp, assessing eyes that took in my bedraggled state in one swift glance. "Sir?" she acknowledged with a slight nod, her accent matching his. That same European precision I couldn't quite place. "This is Miss Lila Chen. Her car broke down on the road. She'll need dry clothes, something warm to drink, and access to a phone." He turned to me. "Loretta manages the household. Anything you need, ask her." Loretta's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes as she looked between us. "Of course. Miss Chen, if you'll follow me." I glanced back at Lancelot, suddenly reluctant to leave the one person I'd actually spoken to, stranger or not. He'd moved to a side table where mail was stacked in neat piles, already dismissing me with the casual ease of someone used to giving orders and having them followed. "It's fine," he said without looking up. "Loretta doesn't bite. Usually." The housekeeper's lips twitched in what might have been amusement. "This way, miss." I followed her through a hallway that belonged in a museum. Oil paintings lined the walls, originals, I was certain, lit by subtle sconces that cast everything in warm, golden light. The ceiling soared above us, decorated with intricate plasterwork that must have taken artisans years to complete. Every detail whispered of old money, the kind that had been accumulating for generations. "How long have you worked here?" I asked, more to break the silence than anything else. 15 years, miss." Loretta led me up a sweeping staircase, her hand trailing along a banister so polished I could see my reflection in it. "Since Mr. Ashford acquired the estate. It's beautiful, like something out of a movie. Mr. Ashford has particular tastes." We reached the second floor and turned down another hallway. He had much of it restored to its original glory. The manor dates back to 1847, built by a railroad magnate who fancied himself an aristocrat. She stopped at a door, opening it to reveal a bedroom that made my breath catch. A 4-poster bed dominated the space, draped in deep burgundy fabrics. More paintings adorned the walls, and a fire crackled in an honest-to-God fireplace. Through an open door, I could see a bathroom with a clawfoot tub. "I'll bring you some dry clothes," Loretta said. "The bathroom has everything you need. Take your time, warm up. There's a robe behind the door." "Thank you," I managed, still taking it all in. She paused at the door. "Miss Chen? A word of advice, if I may." I turned to her, surprised by the shift in her tone. Less formal, more. "Warning? Mr. Ashford is a good employer and a fair man, but he's also accustomed to getting what he wants. If you're smart, you'll call your car service, wait for it to arrive, and leave as quickly as possible." Her gaze was steady, meaningful. "Don't linger in places you don't understand." Before I could respond, she was gone, the door clicking shut behind her. I stood there for a moment, her words echoing in my mind. Don't linger in places you don't understand. What exactly was I supposed to not understand? That Lancelot was wealthy? That much was obvious. That he was dangerous in some way? I'd already suspected as much. But I was cold, wet, and stranded, and that bathtub was calling to me like a siren song. I stripped off my soaked clothes, hanging them over a heated towel rail in the bathroom. The mirror showed a drowned rat of a woman staring back at me, mascara smudged, hair plastered to my face, lips slightly blue from the cold. I looked like the before picture in a survival story. The shower was immediate and hot, the pressure perfect. I stood under the spray until feeling returned to my fingers and toes, until my skin flushed pink and the shivering finally stopped. Whoever stocked this bathroom had expensive taste. The products were all high-end brands I recognized from department store windows but could never afford. When I finally emerged, wrapped in a robe so soft it felt like wearing a cloud, I found clothes laid out on the bed. Not my clothes. Those were still drying in the bathroom. These were new. Black leggings that looked like they'd actually fit. A cream cashmere sweater that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget, and even undergarments still in their packaging. I stared at them for a long moment. How had Loretta known my size? The tags were still on everything, suggesting they'd been purchased specifically. But when? How? Don't linger in places you don't understand. I dressed quickly, trying not to think about the implications. The clothes fit perfectly. Of course they did, which only made it stranger. I towel-dried my hair as best I could and studied myself in the mirror. I looked almost human again, though my eyes were still haunted by the weirdness of this entire situation. A soft knock at the door. "Miss Chen, I have tea for you." Loretta entered with a silver tray bearing a teapot, cup, and an assortment of small sandwiches that made my stomach growl. I hadn't realized how hungry I was. "Thank you," I said, accepting the cup of tea she poured. It was perfect. Hot. Strong. Exactly what I needed. The clothes fit perfectly. "How did you—" Mr. Ashford has an eye for details. She set the tray on a small table by the window. "He asked me to inform you that the phone in the study is at your disposal, and the car service should arrive within 2 hours. 2 hours. That meant I'd be in LA by dawn if I was lucky. Exhausted, but present for my audition. Relief washed through me. "That's perfect. Thank you so much." Loretta nodded, moving toward the door, then paused. "He asked if you would join him for a drink while you wait. The study is on the first floor, third door on the left from the main staircase." It wasn't really a question, though she'd phrased it like one, more like a summons dressed in polite clothing. "Of course," I heard myself say. After Loretta left, I ate 2 of the sandwiches quickly, drinking the tea between bites. The food helped ground me, made everything feel slightly less surreal. I was just a stranded motorist accepting help from a wealthy Good Samaritan. Nothing sinister about that. People did kind things for strangers all the time. Except kind strangers didn't usually live in Gothic mansions with housekeepers who gave cryptic warnings. I finished the tea, checked my phone, still no signal, which seemed impossible in a place like this, and made my way back downstairs. The house was quieter now, the storm's fury muted by thick stone walls. I could hear the rain still, but it seemed distant, like something happening in another world. Third door on the left. I found it easily enough, the door slightly ajar, warm light spilling into the hallway. I knocked softly. "Come in, Lila." The study was smaller than the other rooms I'd seen, but somehow more intimate. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves lined 3 walls, filled with leather-bound volumes that looked well-read rather than decorative. A fire crackled in the fireplace, and Lancelot stood beside it, a glass of amber liquid in his hand. He'd changed too, dark slacks and a deep blue shirt, sleeves rolled to his elbows. His dark hair was still damp, pushed back from his face. "The clothes fit," he observed, those gray eyes traveling over me in a way that made me very aware of how well the cashmere hugged my curves. "Good." "How did you know my size?" I asked, deciding direct was better than dancing around it. "I'm observant." He gestured to a chair near the fire. "Please sit. Would you like something to drink? I have excellent whiskey, wine, or I can have Loretta bring you something else." I sat, sinking into leather that was probably older than I was. "Wine would be nice, thank you." He moved to a sideboard, pouring red wine into a crystal glass with practiced ease. When he handed it to me, his fingers brushed mine, and I felt that touch like an electric shock. His expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Awareness, perhaps. Recognition of the same spark. "To fortuitous breakdowns," he said, raising his glass. I clinked mine against his, though the toast felt loaded with meaning I didn't understand. The wine was incredible, rich and complex, the kind of thing I'd only tasted at fancy restaurant openings where I was serving, not drinking. "This is a beautiful home," I said, searching for safe conversational ground. "Have you lived here long?" 15 years. I bought it when I was 30, right after—" He paused, something crossing his face. "Right after a significant business success. It was going to be torn down, subdivided. I couldn't let that happen. You saved it." I'm a sucker for beautiful things on the edge of destruction. The way he said it, looking directly at me, made it feel like we weren't talking about the house anymore. They're worth preserving, don't you think? I took another sip of wine to avoid answering. "What kind of business are you in exactly? You mentioned investments, but that's pretty vague." His smile was slight, acknowledging that I'd caught him in another non-answer. "Import, export, various holdings across multiple industries. Nothing terribly exciting to discuss at—" He checked his watch, an elegant piece that probably cost more than my car. 1 in the morning during a storm. "More interesting than talking about my failed audition chances," I countered. "You won't fail." He settled into the chair across from me, completely at ease in his own domain. "You have the look of someone who fights for what they want. That kind of determination shows on stage, on screen. Directors notice it. You sound like you know something about the industry." "I know people." He swirled his whiskey. "I know how they think, what they value, what makes them take chances on unknowns." His gaze held mine. "Tell me about the role." So I did. Maybe it was the wine, or the warmth of the fire, or the surreal intimacy of the moment. But I found myself talking about the character. A woman in 1920s New York, navigating a world of speakeasies and gangsters, trying to maintain her independence while falling for a dangerous man. I talked about the complexity of playing someone torn between safety and desire, between what she should want and what she actually wants. "She sounds like she's in an impossible position," Lancelot observed when I finished. "Drawn to something she knows is dangerous." "That's what makes it interesting," I said. "The conflict. The choice between the smart thing and the thing that makes her feel alive." "And which would you choose? In her position?" The question felt loaded. "I'd like to think I'd choose the smart thing. But you're not sure." It wasn't a question. I wasn't. And sitting here, in this Gothic mansion with this beautiful, dangerous stranger, drinking wine that cost more than my rent, I was starting to understand that character better than I wanted to. "The car service," I said, changing the subject. "You said 2 hours?" "Traffic permitting. The storm is causing delays." He checked his phone. No trouble with signal, apparently. "You have time." Time. In this house, with this man, time felt elastic, unreliable. Like I might look at a clock and discover hours had passed without me noticing. "Can I ask you something?" The words came out before I could stop them. "You can ask." I may not answer. "Why did you stop? On the road, in the storm. You could have driven past." He was quiet for a moment, firelight playing across his features, making him look almost otherworldly. "I don't like seeing beautiful things damaged," he said finally. abandoned on the side of the road, slowly freezing. It offends my sense of order. I'm not a thing to be rescued. No, he agreed. You're a woman who makes her own choices, but that doesn't change the fact that you needed help, and I was in a position to provide it. He leaned forward slightly. Does accepting help make you uncomfortable, Lila? From strangers? Yes. I'm not a stranger anymore. You know my name. You're in my home, wearing clothes I provided, drinking my wine. We're practically intimate. The word hung in the air between us, charged with possibility and danger. I should have been terrified. Every rational part of my brain was screaming warnings. But there was another part, the part that had chosen to get in his car, that was drawn to the edge of the cliff just to see what falling might feel like. You don't know anything about me, I said, but my voice lacked conviction. I know you're an actress willing to drive through a storm for an audition. I know you're proud enough to consider freezing rather than accept help from a stranger. I know you notice details. You've been cataloging this room since you walked in, noting the books, the artwork, looking for clues about who I am. He tilted his head. Am I wrong? He wasn't. I'd been doing exactly that. The books were eclectic. Philosophy, history, modern fiction, all looking read and reread. The artwork was striking, pieces I'd seen in my art history classes. Everything in this room spoke of someone intelligent, cultured, and completely self-assured. So what have you concluded? He asked, amusement in his voice. That you're wealthy, well-educated, and used to getting your own way, I said. That you live alone by choice, not circumstance. That you have excellent taste in wine, and a talent for making people feel like you're offering them something when you're really studying them like specimens under glass. He laughed, genuine and delighted. Accurate on all counts, you're perceptive. It's my job. Actors study people. So do I. He stood, moving to refill his glass. Different reasons, perhaps, but the skill is the same. Reading between the lines, understanding motivation, seeing what people try to hide. And what am I trying to hide? He turned back to me, backlit by the fire, and suddenly the room felt smaller, more intimate. That you're attracted to me despite every instinct telling you not to be. That part of you wants to miss that audition, stay here, see what happens. That you're tired of fighting so hard for everything, and the idea of someone taking care of things for you is more tempting than you want to admit. My breath caught. He was right, terrifyingly right, about all of it. That's presumptuous, I managed. Is it wrong? I couldn't answer. Wouldn't answer. Instead, I stood, setting my wine glass down with a hand that trembled slightly. I should go wait by the door. The car will be here soon. Running away? Being smart. Pity. He didn't move to stop me as I headed for the door. I was enjoying our conversation. I paused at the threshold, some reckless part of me making me look back. He stood by the fire, watching me with those storm-gray eyes, and the intensity in his gaze made my stomach flip. Thank you, I said, for the help, the clothes, everything. You're welcome, Lila Chen. The way he said my name felt like a caress. Though I suspect this isn't quite over yet. The car will be here any minute. Perhaps. His smile was knowing, almost predatory. But storms have a way of lasting longer than expected. I left before I could do something stupid, like ask what he meant. The hallway felt colder after the warmth of the study, and I wrapped my arms around myself as I made my way toward the main entrance. Loretta appeared as if summoned, her expression unreadable. The car service called, she said. The storm has closed the mountain road. Flooding. They cannot reach us until morning at the earliest. My heart sank. Morning. But my audition... I'm sorry, miss. The weather is quite severe. She gestured toward the windows, where I could see rain still sheeting down, heavier than before. Mr. Ashford has asked me to prepare the guest room for the night. You're welcome to stay until the road's clear. Welcome, required. In this place, I was beginning to realize those words meant the same thing. I don't really have a choice, do I? I asked quietly. Loretta's expression softened slightly. We always have choices, Miss Chen. But sometimes the choice is between bad options and worse ones. Staying here tonight, warm and safe, seems preferable to the alternative. She was right, of course. But as I followed her back upstairs, as I settled into that beautiful bedroom with its four-poster bed and crackling fire, I couldn't shake Lancelot's words from my mind. I suspect this isn't quite over yet. And deep down, in a place I didn't want to examine too closely, I wasn't sure I wanted it to be. I didn't sleep. How could I? Every creak of the old house settling, every gust of wind against the windows, kept me startlingly alert. I lay in that enormous bed, wrapped in sheets that probably cost more than my monthly rent, staring at the ceiling and watching shadows dance in the firelight. At some point, I gave up on sleep entirely. I grabbed my phone. Still no signal, which was starting to feel less like bad luck and more like something deliberate, and tried to distract myself by running lines from the audition script I'd memorized weeks ago. But the words felt hollow now. Meaningless sounds that couldn't compete with the reality of where I was. Around 3 a.m, I heard footsteps in the hallway. Measured, unhurried. They paused outside my door for just a moment, long enough for my heart to hammer against my ribs, then continued on. I told myself it was Loretta checking on the house, or maybe just the old building settling. I told myself a lot of things that night that I didn't quite believe. When gray dawn finally crept through the curtains, I felt more exhausted than I had after the drive. I dragged myself to the window and looked out over the grounds. The storm had passed, leaving everything washed clean and glittering with rainwater. The view was breathtaking. Manicured gardens, a small lake in the distance, and beyond that, nothing but wilderness stretching to the horizon. Beautiful, isolated, perfect. A soft knock at the door made me jump. Miss Chen, I have breakfast for you. Loretta entered with another silver tray, this one laden with coffee, fresh pastries, and what looked like actual eggs Benedict. The aroma made my stomach growl traitorously. Good morning, I said, my voice rough from disuse. Is the road clear? I'm afraid not. She set the tray on the table by the window. The flooding is quite severe. The authorities are saying it could be another 12 hours before it's safe to travel. 12 hours. My audition was in 6. I felt something inside me crumble, that fragile hope I'd been clinging to dissolving like sugar in rain. I see, I managed, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. Thank you for letting me know. Loretta hesitated, then said quietly, I'm sorry, miss. I know this was important to you. After she left, I sat at the table and stared at the breakfast without seeing it. I should eat. I should call my agent, explain the situation, beg for another chance. I should do a lot of things. Instead, I just sat there, feeling the weight of failure settle over me like a physical thing. May I join you? I looked up to find Lancelot in the doorway, dressed in dark slacks and a crisp white shirt, looking like he'd slept perfectly while I'd spent the night jumping at shadows. His hair was still damp from a shower, and he smelled of that same expensive cologne and something else, coffee and rain-washed air. It's your house, I said, not bothering to hide my bitterness. You can do whatever you want. He entered without waiting for a proper invitation, carrying his own cup of coffee. The chair across from me groaned slightly under his weight as he sat, studying me with those penetrating gray eyes. You didn't sleep, he observed. How could you tell? The shadows under your eyes, the way you're holding yourself, like you're trying not to shatter. He sipped his coffee. Also, I heard you pacing around 2:30. Of course he had. Sorry if I disturbed you. You didn't. He set his cup down, leaning back in his chair with that casual elegance that seemed innate to him. I don't sleep much anyway. Old habit. From what? I asked, then immediately regretted it. I shouldn't be curious about him. I shouldn't want to know anything beyond when I could leave. From a life that required vigilance. He smiled slightly. You learn to sleep light when you can't afford to be caught unaware. That sounds ominous. Does it? He picked up a piece of pastry from my tray, breaking off a corner. Or perhaps just honest. We all have pasts, Lila. Some of us just wear ours more openly than others. I finally took a bite of the Eggs Benedict, if only to have something to do with my hands. It was perfect, of course. Everything in this house was perfect, which somehow made it all worse. The audition, Lancelot said after a moment. You're mourning it already. Wouldn't you? This was my shot. My one real chance at something bigger than serving coffee and waiting tables between bit parts that lead nowhere. I set my fork down, suddenly not hungry. Do you have any idea what it's like to work that hard for something, to be so close you can taste it, and then have it ripped away by random chance? Actually, I do. His voice had gone quiet, serious. More than you might think. I looked at him properly then, really looked. There was something in his expression. A shadow of old pain that didn't match the polished exterior. What happened to you? The question slipped out before I could stop it. For a long moment, he didn't answer. He stared out the window at the rain-washed gardens, his jaw tight, and I thought he might not respond at all. Then he spoke, his voice measured and careful. I was supposed to be a lawyer. That was the plan. Law school, prestigious firm, partnership by 35. Very respectable. Very safe. He turned back to me. Then my father died, suddenly, and I discovered that his import business was considerably less legal than I'd believed. I inherited an empire built on activities that would have gotten me disbarred before I'd even started. My coffee cup paused halfway to my lips. What kind of activities? The kind that require vigilance. The kind that don't appear on tax returns. His gaze held mine, unflinching. I had a choice. Walk away, let it all crumble, let the people who depended on my father lose everything. Or step up, learn the business, make it work. You chose to stay. I chose to survive. And then I chose to transform it into something I could live with. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. It took years, Lila. Years of careful maneuvering, of legitimizing operations while maintaining the power structure. Some of my father's associates didn't appreciate the changes. Some made their displeasure known in traditional ways. Traditional ways, I repeated. You mean violence. I mean survival. His voice was hard now, edges showing through the polished surface. You wanted honesty? Here it is. I run a business empire that touches dozens of industries. Most of it is completely legal now. Most. But the foundation was built on sand and blood, and some stains don't wash out, no matter how hard you scrub. I should have been terrified. Should have demanded he let me leave immediately. Flooded roads be damned. Instead, I found myself asking, why are you telling me this? Because you asked. Because you're sitting in my house, wearing clothes I provided, and I owe you the truth about who you're dealing with. He stood, moving to the window. And because I think you're stronger than you realize. Strong enough to hear ugly truths without falling apart. I set my coffee down carefully, my hands suddenly unsteady. What do you want from me, Lancelot? Right now, nothing. He turned back to me. You're stranded by circumstances beyond anyone's control. When the road's clear, you're free to leave. No strings, no obligations. I don't believe you. His smile was sharp. Smart girl. You're right not to. He moved back toward the door, pausing at the threshold. Come find me when you're finished with breakfast. There's something I want to show you. What if I don't want to see it? Then stay here. Lock the door if it makes you feel safer. That knowing smile again. But you won't. You're too curious, too attracted to danger despite knowing better. It's part of what makes you interesting. He left before I could argue, his footsteps fading down the hallway. I sat there for a long moment, my breakfast cooling, my mind racing. Everything he'd said should have sent me running. Instead, it made a terrible kind of sense. The isolation of this place. The casual wealth, Loretta's cryptic warnings. They all fit a picture of a man who'd built an empire in the shadows and was trying to step into the light without leaving his power behind. And he was right about one thing. I was curious. God help me. I wanted to know more. I finished my coffee, changed into the clothes that had dried overnight, my own clothes now, slightly wrinkled but mine, and went looking for him. The house was easier to navigate in daylight. I could see the full scope of its beauty now, the intricate woodwork, the stained glass windows casting colored light across marble floors, the artwork that would make museum curators weep. Every detail spoke of careful curation, of someone who knew exactly what they wanted and had the resources to obtain it. I found him in what Loretta had called the gallery, a long room lined with paintings and sculptures. He stood before a particular painting, hands in his pockets, studying it with an intensity that made me hesitate to interrupt. It's a Caravaggio, he said without turning around. Or a very good copy. Experts disagree. I moved closer, studying the painting. It showed a moment of violence frozen in time. One figure attacking another in dramatic chiaroscuro, all shadow and sharp light. Why do you keep it? I asked. If it reminds you of violence. Because it's honest. He finally looked at me. Caravaggio didn't paint pretty lies. He painted truth. Ugly, beautiful, human truth. This is Judith beheading Holofernes. A woman doing what was necessary to save her people, no matter the cost. You identify with her. With both of them, actually. The one who does violence and the one who receives it. I've been on both sides. He gestured to the rest of the gallery. Everything here tells a story. Some beautiful, some terrible, but all true. I walked along the gallery, studying each piece. There was a pattern I couldn't quite name. Themes of transformation, of beauty emerging from darkness, of redemption and ruin intertwined. You wanted to show me this, I said. Why? Because I think you understand. As an actress, you inhabit the space between truth and performance. You know that sometimes the most honest thing is a well-crafted lie, and sometimes the biggest lie is pretending everything is fine. He moved to stand beside me in front of a sculpture. Two figures intertwined, impossible to tell where one ended and the other began. This is what I do, Lila. I blur lines. I exist in gray spaces. And I wanted you to see that before you decided what you think of me. I haven't decided anything, I said, but it felt like a lie. Haven't you? His hand came up, not touching me, but close enough that I could feel the heat of it. You've already made a dozen calculations about who I am, what I want, whether I'm dangerous. You've weighed your options and decided that curiosity outweighs caution. Otherwise, you'd still be in your room. He was too close, his presence too overwhelming. I stepped back, needing space to think. The roads, I said, changing the subject. When they clear, I need to call my agent, try to reschedule. Already done. I froze. What? I called your agent this morning, explained the situation, stranded by the storm, impossible to reach you directly due to the cell service issues up here. She was very understanding. He pulled out his phone, showed me an email chain I couldn't have seen. The producers have agreed to reschedule your audition for next week. Same role, same opportunity. I stared at the emails, my heart pounding. How did you get my agent's number? Your headshot's in the back seat of your car. They had her contact information printed on the back. He pocketed the phone. I took the liberty last night while you were settling in. I hope you don't mind. Mind? He'd gone through my car, contacted my agent, rearranged my entire professional life without asking. It should have enraged me. Instead, I felt a complicated swirl of relief, gratitude, and something darker. The realization that he'd just demonstrated exactly how much control he could exert over my life with a single phone call. You had no right, I said, but the words lacked heat. I had every right. You were my guest, in distress over a situation I couldn't immediately fix. So I fixed what I could. His gaze was steady, unapologetic. You're welcome. That's not how gratitude works. Isn't it? He tilted his head. You needed help. I provided it. The methods are irrelevant if the outcome is what you wanted. The methods are everything, I countered. You can't just manipulate people's lives because you have the power to do it. Can't I? That predatory smile again. Lila, I've been doing exactly that for 15 years. It's how I survived, how I built this. He gestured to the gallery, the house, everything. The difference is I'm telling you about it. Most people never know when they're being helped or hindered. You get the truth. Why me? The question hung between us, heavy with implications neither of us were quite ready to voice. Because you interest me, he said finally. Because I saw you on that road, soaking wet and terrified but still proud, still fighting. Because in 15 years of carefully controlling every aspect of my life, you're the first truly random element I've encountered. And I'm curious to see what happens when I don't control everything. I'm not a game. No, you're considerably more dangerous than that. He moved closer, and this time I didn't step back. A game I understand. You, I don't. And I've built my entire life on understanding things before they can hurt me. What makes you think I could hurt you? His hand came up, this time actually touching, fingertips ghosting along my jaw with devastating gentleness. Because I'm already compromised. I should have driven past you last night. Should have sent Loretta to deal with you, kept my distance. Instead, I'm standing here, telling you things I've never told anyone, giving you ammunition that could destroy me. My breath had gone shallow. I wouldn't you? His thumb traced my lower lip. If I turned out to be the monster you're half convinced I am, if staying here became a cage instead of a refuge, you'd use every weapon at your disposal. You'd be smart too. Then why risk it? Because some risks are worth taking. His voice had gone rough. And because I think you understand something most people don't, that monsters aren't born, they're made. By circumstance, by necessity, by the accumulated weight of impossible choices. I should have moved away. Should have reminded him I was leaving as soon as possible, that whatever this was between us couldn't go anywhere. Instead, I heard myself ask, what if I don't leave? When the road's clear, what if I stayed? Something fierce and possessive flashed in his eyes. Then I would give you everything I have. And I would ask for everything you are in return. No half measures, no pretense, just truth, however ugly or beautiful it might be. That's terrifying. Yes. His hand fell away, and I immediately missed the contact. Which is why you'll leave. You'll go to your audition, get the part. Because you will, you're too good not to, and you'll build the life you've been fighting for. This will become a strange story you tell at parties, about the time you broke down in a storm and met a dangerous man in a Gothic mansion. Is that what you want? What I want is irrelevant. He stepped back, putting distance between us. You have a life to build, Lila. I won't be the thing that derails it. What if I derail it myself? The question surprised us both. I hadn't known I was going to ask it until the words were out. Lancelot stared at me, something vulnerable flickering across his features before the mask slammed back into place. Don't, he said quietly. Don't make promises in this house, in this moment. Everything feels more intense when you're isolated. When the real world comes back, you'll regret it. You don't know that. I know how this works. I've seen it before. The intensity of extreme circumstances creating false intimacy. You think you know me because I've been honest about my past, but honesty isn't the same as understanding. Then help me understand. I moved closer, closing the distance he'd created. You've been in my car, called my agent, dressed me in clothes you somehow knew would fit. You've told me things I shouldn't know, shown me parts of yourself that could be dangerous for me to see. None of that is normal stranger behavior. So tell me, what do you actually want? For a long moment, he was silent, his jaw working as he fought some internal battle. Then he said, very quietly, I want to keep you. I want to put you in this house like a rare painting and know that you're here. Safe. Mine. I want to wake up knowing you're down the hall. I want to watch you become whoever you're meant to be, while knowing that at the end of the day, you come back to me. He laughed, bitter and self-aware. Which is exactly why you need to leave. Because those aren't the wants of a good man. They're the wants of someone who collects beautiful things and doesn't like to share. The honesty of it stole my breath. He'd just laid himself bare, shown me exactly how dangerous he could be, and somehow that vulnerability made him more compelling, not less. What if... I started, but he cut me off. The roads will be clear by noon. Loretta will drive you to your car, which I've already arranged to have repaired and returned to a garage near here. You'll have time to get home, rest, prepare for your rescheduled audition. His voice had gone formal, distant. In the meantime, you're welcome to explore the grounds, use the library, whatever you like. I have work to attend to. He was dismissing me, putting up walls after tearing them down, and the whiplash of it left me reeling. Lancelot. This is for the best, Lila. He was already moving toward the door. Trust me on that, if nothing else. He left, and I stood alone in the gallery, surrounded by art that depicted transformation and violence and beauty born from darkness. My reflection stared back at me from the glass protecting a Caravaggio, looking lost and confused and entirely out of my depth. I should have felt relieved. He'd just given me an out, made it clear I could leave without complication. Instead, I felt something like loss, as if I was walking away from something important without ever understanding what it was. The rest of the morning passed in a strange limbo. I explored the library, trailing my fingers along leather spines and trying not to think about Lancelot's confession. I walked the gardens, now gleaming with rainwater, and tried to convince myself that leaving was the right choice. I even went back to my room and packed my things, which weren't really my things, except for my own dried clothes, preparing for Loretta's promised drive. I didn't see Lancelot again until noon, when I came downstairs with my bag to find him in the entrance hall. He'd changed into a suit, formal and intimidating, every inch the wealthy businessman, rather than the vulnerable man who'd confessed to wanting to keep me like artwork. The roads are clear, he said without preamble. Loretta is waiting with the car. Thank you, I managed, for everything. The help, the clothes, rescheduling my audition. I don't know how I'll ever repay you. Consider it a gift. His expression was unreadable. And Lila? Good luck with the audition. I meant what I said. You'll get the part. You're too good not to. I should have just left. Should have walked out the door without looking back. Instead, I set my bag down and crossed the space between us before I could talk myself out of it. "Thank you," I said again, and I kissed him. It was meant to be brief, a gesture of gratitude, nothing more. But the moment our lips touched, something ignited. His hands came up to frame my face, and he kissed me back with a hunger that made my knees weak. It was everything I'd imagined, and nothing I'd expected. Desperate and controlled all at once, like he was fighting himself even as he pulled me closer. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, his eyes were wild, almost dangerous. "Lila," he said, my name a warning and a plea. "I know," I whispered. "I know this is crazy. I know I should leave. I know everything you've said is right. But, I'm going to give you my number anyway. And if you want to call me after I'm back in my real life and this all feels less intense, then call me. And we'll see what happens when we're not stranded in a Gothic mansion during a storm." I scrawled my number on a piece of paper from my bag, pressing it into his hand. His fingers closed around it like a lifeline. "This is a terrible idea," he said. "Probably." I picked up my bag, but I've never been good at taking the safe route. I walked out before I could change my mind, before I could see his expression, before I could do something even more reckless like ask to stay. Loretta was waiting by a sleek black car, her face neutral, but her eyes knowing. She opened the door for me without comment, and I slid into the back seat, watching as the mansion grew smaller in the distance. I didn't look back. Couldn't look back. Because if I did, I might ask her to turn around. My phone buzzed as we hit the main road, signal returning like the real world rushing back in. Messages from Jen, from my agent confirming the rescheduled audition, from my apartment complex about a water leak. Normal life, with its normal problems, ready to welcome me back. But as we drove away from Thornfield Manor, away from Lancelot Ashford and his dangerous confessions, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd left something important behind. Or maybe that I'd found something I wasn't supposed to find, and nothing would ever quite be the same again. 3 days. That's how long I lasted before everything Lancelot had said proved true. The intensity faded, reality reasserted itself, and I convinced myself that what happened at Thornfield Manor was just a strange interlude, a fever dream brought on by stress and circumstance. Except I kept finding myself touching my lips, remembering that kiss. Kept pulling out the business card he'd given me that first night, running my thumb over the embossed lettering. Kept checking my phone for a call that never came. The audition went exactly as he'd predicted. I nailed it. The director practically offered me the role on the spot, pending final network approval. My agent was ecstatic, already talking about the doors this would open, the opportunities that would follow. Everything I'd worked for was finally happening, so why did it feel hollow? "You've been weird since you got back," Jen observed on the 4th day, sprawled across our ratty couch while I pretended to read a script. Like, weirder than usual. What happened during that storm? "Nothing," I lied. "Car broke down, I waited it out, got it fixed. End of story." "Uh-huh." She wasn't buying it. "Except you've checked your phone approximately 8,000 times in the last hour, and you keep spacing out mid-sentence. So either you met someone, or you witnessed a murder. Which is it?" "Neither. I'm just tired." "Liar." She sat up, eyes narrowing. "Oh my God, you met someone. Who is he? What's his name? Is he hot? Why haven't you called him?" "I gave him my number," I admitted before I could stop myself. "He hasn't called." "How long has it been?" 4 days. Jen made a face. "Okay, that's not great. But maybe he's playing it cool. Guys do that. Or maybe he lost your number. Or maybe he realized it was a mistake," I finished. "Which it was. I barely know him, Jen. We talked for a few hours during a storm. That's not the foundation for anything real. Even as I said it, I knew it was a lie. Those few hours had felt more real than most of my relationships. The way Lancelot had looked at me, the things he'd confessed, the raw honesty between us. That wasn't nothing. But 4 days of silence suggested he disagreed. My phone rang, and I lunged for it so fast that Jen laughed. But it was just my agent, calling to confirm that the network had officially approved my casting. I should have been thrilled. Instead, I felt the hollow space in my chest grow wider. "Congratulations, superstar," Jen said, reading my expression. "Try to contain your enthusiasm." "I am excited," I protested. "This is everything I wanted." "Then why do you look like someone canceled Christmas?" I didn't have an answer for that. The next 3 days passed in a blur of meetings, costume fittings, table reads, contract negotiations. I threw myself into work, trying to drown out the persistent voice in my head that kept replaying Lancelot's words. "I want to keep you." The honesty of it, the danger of it, the terrible temptation of it. On the 7th day, I broke. I'd been staring at his business card for an hour, phone in hand, cursor hovering over the keypad. It was stupid. Desperate. Exactly the kind of thing I'd sworn I'd never do. But the not knowing was worse than the potential rejection. I typed out a text before I could overthink it. "This is Lila. Just wanted to say thanks again for your help. Hope you're well." Casual, friendly, giving him an easy out if he wanted to take it. I hit send and immediately wanted to die. The text showed as delivered, then, agonizingly, as read. The 3 dots appeared, indicating he was typing. Then they disappeared. 5 minutes passed. 10. Nothing. "Okay, that's it," I muttered, throwing my phone across the room. "I'm done. Moving on. Forgetting the whole thing ever happened." My phone buzzed. I scrambled across the room, nearly tripping over Jen's discarded shoes in my haste to grab it. "Unknown number. I was beginning to think you'd forgotten about me." My heart hammered against my ribs. I typed back, "You're the one who didn't call." The response came quickly. "I was trying to do the right thing. Give you space. Let you build your life without interference from me." How noble of you. It was torture, if that helps. Despite everything, I smiled. A little. "The audition went well, I assume? Since you have time to text strange men you barely know." "Got the part. Shooting starts next month." "I knew you would. Congratulations, Lila. You've earned it." I stared at the screen, trying to decide what to say next. The truth? A polite thank you and goodbye? Before I could decide, he texted again. "I shouldn't ask this. It's selfish and probably a terrible idea. But are you free this weekend?" My fingers trembled as I typed. "Depends. What did you have in mind?" "Dinner. Somewhere public, well lit, with plenty of witnesses. So you can't accuse me of trying to lure you back to my Gothic mansion." "Just dinner?" "Just dinner, and conversation. And maybe a chance to see if what we felt during the storm was real, or just circumstances making us both a little crazy." I should have said no. Should have protected myself, maintained the distance he'd tried to give me. Instead, I typed, "Saturday, 7 p.m., and you're picking the place, somewhere that proves you can be normal." I don't think I've ever been accused of being normal. Then surprise me. There was a pause, longer this time. Then, "I look forward to it, Lila Chen. And for what it's worth, I'm glad you texted." I clutched the phone to my chest, grinning like an idiot. Jen appeared in the doorway, took one look at my face and groaned. "Oh no, you've got it bad." "Shut up. You're smiling at your phone like it just proposed. This is serious." She flopped down beside me. "Okay, tell me everything, and don't leave out any details." So I did. I told her about the broken down car, the storm, the mansion. I told her about Lancelot, though I edited some of the more concerning revelations about his past. I told her about the kiss, the confession, the week of silence that had felt like drowning. When I finished, Jen was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "This guy sounds either incredible or like a serial killer. I genuinely can't tell which." "That's reassuring." "I'm serious, Lila. He goes through your car, calls your agent without asking, has clothes that fit you perfectly ready to go. That's either incredibly thoughtful or incredibly creepy." "I know," I admitted. "Believe me, I've thought about all of this. But Jen, when I'm with him, I feel seen. Like he actually understands me. Not the actress version of me, not the struggling artist version. Just me." She sighed. "Okay, but promise me you'll be careful. Meet him in public places. Tell me where you're going. Maybe share your location. Because if this goes south, I need to know where to tell the police to look for your body." "You're so dramatic," says the actress dating the mysterious millionaire with a dark past. She squeezed my hand. "I just don't want you to get hurt. You've worked too hard to get here." Saturday arrived both too quickly and not quickly enough. I changed outfits 4 times before settling on a simple black dress, elegant without trying too hard, the kind of thing that could work for any venue. I did my makeup carefully, hands steadier than I'd expected, and studied myself in the mirror. I looked different. There was something in my eyes that hadn't been there before. Anticipation mixed with apprehension. Hope tempered by caution. The face of someone about to step off a cliff and hoping there was something other than empty air below. My phone buzzed. I'm outside. I grabbed my purse, called goodbye to Jen, and headed downstairs. The sleek black car waiting at the curb was familiar, the same one from that night. The driver's window rolled down, and there he was. Lancelot looked different outside the context of his mansion. More human somehow, though no less magnetic. He wore a dark suit that probably cost more than my rent, and his gray eyes tracked my approach with an intensity that made my breath catch. He got out to open my door, and the familiar gesture made something in my chest tighten. "You look beautiful," he said simply. "You clean up nice yourself," I managed, sliding into the passenger seat. The interior smelled of leather and his cologne, bringing back memories of that storm-soaked night. He settled into the driver's seat, and for a moment, we just looked at each other. "I wasn't sure you'd actually show," he admitted. "I wasn't sure you'd actually call." I tried not to. His hand rested on the gear shift, close enough to touch but not touching. "Spent the entire week convincing myself that contacting you was selfish, that you deserved better than whatever I could offer. Then you texted, and all that noble restraint went out the window. I'm glad it did." He started the car, pulling smoothly into traffic. "So you wanted normal. Let's see if I remember how that's done." The restaurant he'd chosen was perfect, upscale but not intimidating, busy enough to feel safe but quiet enough for conversation. The maitre d' greeted Lancelot by name, leading us to a corner table that somehow felt both prominent and private. "You come here often?" I asked as he held my chair. "Occasionally. The owner is a friend." He sat across from me, and the candlelight caught the sharp planes of his face. "Before you ask, a legitimate friend, someone I knew before inheriting my father's empire. One of the few people who knew me when I was just a law student with normal problems." A waiter appeared with menus and wine recommendations. Lancelot ordered with easy confidence, then turned his full attention back to me. "Tell me about the role," he said, "the one you fought so hard for." So I did. I talked about the character, the story, the challenge of bringing a 1920s woman to life, without making her feel like a period piece costume. I talked about the director's vision, the other cast members, the terrifying excitement of finally having a real opportunity. He listened with the same intensity he'd shown in his study, asking insightful questions that revealed he actually understood the craft. When the food arrived, exquisite of course, the conversation flowed naturally, moving from my work to books, art, the philosophy of transformation and second chances. "You never did tell me," I said over dessert, "what made you actually call, after trying so hard not to." He was quiet for a moment, swirling wine in his glass. Honestly, I realized that noble restraint was just cowardice dressed up as consideration. I was afraid of what would happen if I pursued this, if I let myself want something I couldn't control. He met my eyes. But fear is a terrible reason not to try. Even when the fear is justified, especially then. He reached across the table, his fingers brushing mine. "I'm not going to pretend this will be simple, Lila. I come with complications. My past, my business, the way I live. None of it is normal. But I think you're strong enough to handle complicated. You keep saying that I'm strong. Because it's true. You've built a career from nothing, survived on determination and talent alone. You took a chance getting in my car during that storm, even though every instinct probably screamed danger." His thumb traced circles on my hand. "Most people play it safe. You don't. That's strength. Or stupidity. Sometimes they're the same thing." After dinner, he drove me home, and I found myself not wanting the evening to end. We sat in the car outside my building, the engine idling, neither of us moving to leave. "Can I ask you something?" I said finally. "And will you actually answer? Try me. What do you actually want from me? Not the careful answer, not the noble answer, the truth." He turned to face me fully, and in the dim light from the street lamps, his eyes were almost silver. "I want to know you. Everything about you. What you think about when you can't sleep. What makes you laugh. What terrifies you. What you dream about when you let yourself dream big." He reached out, tucking a strand of hair behind my ear. "And selfishly, I want you to want to know those things about me. To see past the surface to whoever I actually am beneath all the careful construction. That's not selfish. That's just honest. Is it enough?" His voice had gone quiet, vulnerable in a way I'd only heard once before. "I know I'm not the safe choice. I know there are probably a dozen reasons you should walk away right now." Instead of answering, I leaned across the center console and kissed him. It was softer than that first kiss, less desperate, but no less intense. His hand came up to cradle my face, and I felt the barely controlled hunger in his touch, the restraint it took not to pull me closer. When we parted, he rested his forehead against mine. "You're making this very difficult." "Good." I pulled back, reaching for the door handle. "Pick me up next Saturday? Same time? You want to do this again? I want to see where this goes. If it's real, or just storm-induced insanity." I paused, one foot out of the car. "But Lancelot? No more disappearing for a week. If this is going to work, we need to actually communicate." "Agreed." He caught my hand before I could fully exit. "And Lila? Thank you." "For what?" "For taking the chance, for not playing it safe." His smile was crooked, almost boyish. "For texting me when I was too much of a coward to call you first." I squeezed his hand and got out, forcing myself not to look back until I reached my building's door. When I finally turned, he was still there, watching to make sure I got inside safely. Upstairs, Jen was waiting up, predictably. "Well?" "Well," I said, unable to suppress my smile. "I think I might be in trouble. Good trouble or bad trouble." I thought about Lancelot's confession, about the complications he'd warned me about about the way my heart had stuttered every time he looked at me. Both. Definitely both. The next week passed in a strange new rhythm. We texted constantly, sometimes deep conversations that stretched late into the night, sometimes just random observations about our days. He sent me photos of artworks he thought I'd appreciate. I sent him terrible selfies from costume fittings. It felt normal and extraordinary all at once. But there was an edge to it too, a sense that we were building something on unstable ground. Sometimes his texts would arrive at odd hours, 3 a.m., 4 a.m., suggesting he still didn't sleep well. Sometimes he'd go silent for hours, and when he returned, there'd be a tension in his messages that suggested something had happened he couldn't or wouldn't explain. I tried not to think about what Loretta had said. Don't linger in places you don't understand. But I was lingering, wasn't I? Letting myself fall for a man who'd admitted his empire was built on blood and sand. Friday night, I was running lines with Jen when my phone rang. Lancelot's name flashed on the screen, and my heart did its now familiar leap. "Hey," I answered, stepping into my room for privacy. "I need to cancel tomorrow." His voice sounded strained, distant. "Something's come up. Business that requires my immediate attention." Disappointment crashed through me. "Oh, okay. Is everything all right?" A pause. "It will be. I'm sorry, Lila. I hate canceling, but this can't wait." "It's fine. I understand." I didn't, really. But what else could I say? "Rain check?" "Definitely." Another pause. "I should go. I'll call you soon." He hung up before I could respond, and I stared at my phone, that old, familiar unease creeping back in. This was exactly what I'd feared, that the complications he'd mentioned would always take priority, that I'd always be secondary to whatever shadows he was managing. But that night, lying in bed unable to sleep, my phone buzzed with a text. "I'm sorry about tonight. I wish I could explain. But some things are better left unknown. What I can say is this: none of it changes how I feel about you. You're the first genuinely good thing in my life in longer than I can remember, and I'm terrified of ruining it. Please don't give up on me yet. L." I stared at the message for a long time before responding. "I'm not giving up. But Lancelot, I need to know there's room for me in your life, not just in the spaces between your complications." His response came immediately. "You're not in the spaces. You're becoming the center. That's what terrifies me." I fell asleep with my phone clutched to my chest, those words echoing in my mind. You're becoming the center. It should have been romantic. Instead, it felt like a warning of storms yet to come. Filming began on a crisp October morning, and I threw myself into the role with a fervor that bordered on obsession. Partly because the character demanded it. She was complex, layered, caught between duty and desire. But mostly because focusing on work kept me from obsessing over Lancelot's increasingly erratic communication patterns. 3 days after our canceled date, he finally called. Not texted, actually called, his voice rough like he'd been awake for days. "I'm sorry," he said without preamble, "for going silent, for canceling, for being exactly the complication I warned you about." "What happened?" I asked, tucked into a corner of the set during a break, trying to keep my voice low. "Something that's been handled. That's all I can say." A pause. "Can I see you? Tonight? If you're free?" I should have made him work for it, should have played it cool. Instead, I said, "I'm done at 6. Pick me up?" "I'll be there." He was waiting outside the studio in his car when I emerged, and the sight of him made my breath catch. He looked exhausted, shadows under his eyes, his normally perfect appearance slightly disheveled. But when he saw me, something in his expression softened, like I was water and he'd been dying of thirst. "You look tired," I said, sliding into the passenger seat. perceptive as always. He pulled into traffic, one hand on the wheel, the other reaching for mine. "How was your first day?" "Terrifying, exhilarating. I forgot half my blocking and the director had to remind me twice where to look." I squeezed his hand, but it felt right, like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. "I'm glad." He glanced at me, and something in his eyes made my stomach flip. "I've been thinking about you constantly. It's been inconvenient." "Inconvenient?" "Distracting. I sit in meetings and find myself wondering what you're doing, whether you're nervous, whether you're remembering your lines, whether you're thinking about me." His grip tightened. "It's unlike me. I don't get distracted. Maybe that's a good thing. Maybe." He pulled into an underground parking garage I didn't recognize. "I thought we could have dinner at my place tonight. The city apartment, not the manor. Somewhere private where we can actually talk." The suggestion should have made me nervous. Private meant intimate, meant stepping deeper into his world. But I was tired of public spaces and careful conversations. "Okay," I agreed. The apartment was in a building I'd passed 1,000 times but never dreamed of entering. All glass and steel, with a doorman who nodded respectfully as we passed. The elevator required a key card for the penthouse, and as we ascended, I felt my ears pop from the rapid climb. "How many places do you have?" I asked, only half joking. "3. The manor, this place, and a house in the Hamptons I almost never use." He watched the numbers climb. "Excessive, I know, but they serve different purposes. The manor is isolation. This is convenience. The Hamptons is investment." The elevator opened directly into his apartment, and I stepped into a space that was somehow both luxurious and surprisingly warm. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city lights. The furniture was expensive but comfortable looking, and there were actual signs of life. Books on tables, a coffee mug on the counter, a jacket thrown over a chair. "This feels more like you," I observed. "Less curated than the manor." "The manor is for show. This is where I actually live." He moved to the kitchen, which was sleek and modern. "Wine?" "Please." I wandered to the windows while he poured, looking out over the glittering city. Somewhere down there was my tiny apartment, my struggling artist life. Up here, it all seemed distant, like looking at someone else's world. "What are you thinking?" Lancelot asked, appearing beside me with 2 glasses. "That this view alone probably costs more than I make in a year." I accepted the wine. "That I'm standing in a multi-million-dollar apartment with a man who has 3 homes and I still don't entirely understand what he does for a living." "Fair point." He gestured to the couch. "Sit. I'll answer your questions. All of them, as honestly as I can." We settled on the couch, and he turned to face me, his expression serious. "What do you want to know?" "Everything." I took a breath. "Start with what happened this week. Why you had to cancel." He was quiet for a long moment, weighing something internally. Then he said, "Someone from my father's old organization tried to cause trouble. They thought I'd gone soft, that the legitimization efforts made me weak. They were wrong." "What kind of trouble?" "The kind that involved threats to my business interests and the people who work for me." His voice had gone hard. I dealt with it, quickly, definitively. "The message has been sent that I'm not to be tested." "Dealt with it how?" His eyes met mine. "Are you sure you want specifics?" I thought about it, really thought about it. Did I want to know the ugly details? The violence that lurked beneath his polished surface? Part of me screamed no, that ignorance was safer, but I'd asked for honesty. "Yes," I said. "I want to know who you really are." "All right." He set his wine down, leaning back. The man who was causing problems had skimmed money from one of my operations, one of the legitimate ones. When confronted, He tried to threaten exposure of some of my father's old dealings. So I invited him to a meeting, showed him exactly what would happen if he continued, and gave him a choice: return what he stole, retire quietly, and live, or continue his campaign and face consequences. What did he choose? The smart option, fortunately. He's currently on a plane to somewhere with no extradition treaty. Significantly poorer, but alive. Lancelot's expression was unreadable. I don't kill lightly, Lila. My father did. He believed fear was the only currency that mattered. I've spent years proving that strength can be controlled, that power doesn't require constant bloodshed. But you would kill, if necessary. Yes. No hesitation, no apology. To protect what's mine, to maintain order, to prevent greater violence. Yes, I would, and I have. Does that terrify you? It should have. Instead, I found myself asking, how many times? 3. Once when someone tried to kill me. Once when an associate targeted innocent people. And once... He stopped, jaw tight. Once when someone hurt someone I cared about. The weight of those confessions hung between us. 3 lives ended by his hand. 3 deaths he carried with him, shaped by, was defined by in ways I couldn't fully understand. Thank you for telling me, I said quietly. For not lying. I won't lie to you, Lila. I'll omit, I'll redirect, but I won't outright lie. You deserve that much. He reached for my hand. Now you get to decide if you can live with who I am, and I'll understand if you can't. I looked at our joined hands, at the contrast between my calloused fingers from years of struggling and his manicured perfection. Everything about us was a contradiction. My tiny apartment and his penthouse, my scrambling career and his established empire, my relative innocence and his blood-stained past. I should be terrified, I admitted. Every rational part of me says I should walk away right now. But when I'm with you, I feel more alive than I've felt in years, like I'm finally living in color instead of grayscale. I met his eyes. You see me, Lancelot. Not the actress. Not the ambitious girl trying to make it. Just me. And when you look at me, I feel significant. You are significant. His free hand came up to cup my face. You're the first person in 15 years who's made me want to be better than I am. Who's made me question whether power is worth having if it means staying isolated. What are you saying? I'm saying that I'm falling for you, Lila Chen. Against my better judgment, against all logic, despite knowing that bringing you into my world puts you at risk. His thumb stroked my cheek. I'm saying that I want this. Want you. And I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make it work. I should have been cautious. Should have asked for time, for space to think. Instead, I kissed him, pouring every confused emotion into the contact. He responded immediately, his control fracturing as he pulled me closer, one hand tangling in my hair, while the other pressed against the small of my back. The kiss deepened, turning desperate. And suddenly we were moving. He was standing, pulling me with him, backing toward what I assumed was the bedroom. But he stopped in the hallway, pressing me against the wall, his forehead against mine as we both caught our breath. Tell me to stop, he said, his voice ragged. Tell me this is too fast, that you need time. Because if we do this, Lila, everything changes. There's no going back to careful distance and polite dating. I don't want careful distance, I whispered. I want this. I want you. Something fierce and possessive flashed in his eyes. You're sure? Terrified, but sure. That was all the permission he needed. He kissed me again, deeper this time, and led me to the bedroom. What followed was intense and consuming, a claiming that left no doubt about how he felt. His touch was reverent and demanding by turns. learning every curve, every sensitive spot, committing me to memory like I was art he intended to keep. Afterward, we lay tangled in sheets that probably cost more than my car, my head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat slow to normal. His fingers traced lazy patterns on my bare shoulder, and I felt more content than I had in years. "Stay," he murmured into my hair. "Tonight, tomorrow, as long as you want." "I have a 5 a.m. call time tomorrow," I said reluctantly, "but I can stay tonight. Then I'll take what I can get." He pulled me closer. "Lila? Thank you, for not running, for giving this a chance despite everything." I tilted my head to look at him. In the dim light from the city beyond the windows, he looked younger, less guarded. "Thank you for being honest, for trusting me with the truth." We fell asleep like that, wrapped around each other, and for the first time in weeks, I didn't dream of broken-down cars and storm-soaked roads. Instead, I dreamed of falling, but this time, there were arms to catch me. My alarm woke me at 4:30, brutal and unwelcome. I fumbled for my phone, silencing it quickly, and found Lancelot already awake beside me, watching me with those gray eyes. "Morning," I mumbled, suddenly self-conscious about morning breath and bedhead. "Good morning." He brushed hair from my face. "Coffee's ready." I set it on a timer. "You're too perfect. It's annoying." He laughed, the sound rich and genuine. "I have many flaws, believe me, but I excel at coffee and time management." I dragged myself out of bed, found my clothes scattered across the room, a trail of last night's urgency, and dressed while Lancelot watched with unabashed appreciation. "Enjoying the show?" I asked, pulling on my jeans. "Immensely. It's not often I get to watch someone I care about prepare to become someone else." He got up, gloriously unself-conscious in his nakedness, and pulled on pants. "That's what you do, isn't it? Transform into your character. More or less." I found my shirt, realizing it was inside out. Though right now I feel less like a glamorous 1920s socialite and more like a walk of shame waiting to happen. There's no shame in this. He came up behind me, wrapping his arms around my waist, and I leaned back into his warmth. "Stay for coffee, at least. I'll drive you to set." "In your very expensive car, wearing yesterday's clothes? The crew will have a field day. Let them talk." He turned me to face him. "I'm not hiding you, Lila. I'm not keeping you secret. If you're willing to be seen with me, I want the world to know you're mine." The possessiveness should have bothered me. Instead, it sent a thrill down my spine. "Yours? If you'll have me. I know I'm complicated. I know there will be challenges. But I want to try this properly. No more disappearing. No more careful distance." His hands framed my face. "Will you be mine, Lila? Officially?" My heart hammered against my ribs. This was insane. We'd known each other for barely a month. But standing there, looking into his eyes, feeling the solid certainty of his presence, I couldn't imagine saying anything but, yes. His smile was devastating, bright and genuine and completely unguarded. He kissed me, sweet and possessive, sealing the promise between us. True to his word, he drove me to set, pulling up in front of the studio in his sleek black car. I saw heads turn, crew members doing double takes as I emerged from the passenger side. "Text me when you're done?" he asked through the open window. "Definitely." I leaned back in, kissing him once more. "Thank you for last night. For everything." The pleasure was entirely mine. His eyes darkened with memory. All mine. I walked onto set, feeling like I was glowing, like everyone could see what had happened written all over my face. Jen materialized beside me almost immediately, her eyes wide. Was that Lancelot Ashford's car? Maybe. Lila Chen, did you just do a walk of shame in a car worth more than our apartment building? I couldn't suppress my grin. I stayed over. We're together now, officially. Oh my God. She grabbed my arm, pulling me toward my trailer. I need details. All of them. Immediately. So I told her, some of it at least. The parts that were mine to share. The parts that didn't involve confessions of violence and empires built on blood. I told her about the apartment, the vulnerability, the way he looked at me like I was precious. This is either the most romantic thing I've ever heard or the beginning of a true crime documentary, Jen concluded. I genuinely can't tell which. Both? I offered. Maybe it's both. The next 3 weeks were a blur of early call times and late nights, of inhabiting my character by day and falling deeper into Lancelot by night. He integrated into my life with surprising ease, showing up at the studio with coffee, texting me encouragement between takes, learning the rhythm of my work without trying to interfere. But there were moments, small ones, that reminded me of the darkness beneath the surface. A hushed phone call he took in another room, a text that made his expression shutter closed, the way he sometimes checked over his shoulder, like he was always aware of potential threats. You're doing it again, I observed one night, 3 weeks into us being official. We were having dinner at a small Italian restaurant he loved, and I'd caught him scanning the room for the 3rd time. Doing what? Checking exits, watching the door, being hyper-aware. I reached across the table for his hand. What aren't you telling me? He sighed, his thumb stroking my palm. Old habits, that's all. Lancelot, there's been some activity, nothing for you to worry about. Just some people from my father's time making noise about the changes I've made. He met my eyes. I'm handling it. Like you handled it before? Similar, but more delicate. These are people with long memories and longer grudges. He attempted a smile. Occupational hazards of reforming a criminal empire. Some people don't appreciate progress. Are you in danger? I'm always in some degree of danger. It's the nature of what I do. He squeezed my hand. But I'm also very good at protecting myself. And now, at protecting you. I didn't ask for protection. I know. But you have it anyway. His expression softened. Lila, I need you to understand something. Being with me means accepting a certain level of risk. Not from me. I would never harm you. But from my world, from the people in it. I have enemies. They might try to use you to get to me. A chill ran down my spine. That's comforting. I'm not saying it to scare you. I'm saying it so you understand why I'm sometimes distracted, why I check exits, why I have Stefano following you. I froze. What? Stefano has been providing discreet security since we became official. Nothing intrusive, just making sure you get to and from set safely. He said it like it was the most reasonable thing in the world. Surely you noticed the black SUV that's always 3 cars behind you? I had noticed, actually. Had assumed it was just a coincidence. The paranoia of living in a big city. The realization that I'd been under surveillance, for my protection. But still, made my skin crawl. You should have told me, I said, pulling my hand back. You should have asked. You're right. I should have. No apology in his tone, just acknowledgement. But I wasn't willing to risk your safety for the sake of asking permission. That's not how this works, Lancelot. You can't just make decisions about my life without consulting me. Can't I? His voice had gone hard. When those decisions keep you alive? When they prevent you from being used as leverage against me? Yes. Lila, I can and I will. That's not negotiable. We stared at each other across the table, the first real conflict between us crackling in the air. Other diners glanced over, sensing the tension. I'm not a possession to be guarded, I said quietly. aware we were drawing attention. I'm a person with autonomy. You're also the woman I'm falling in love with, which means you're a target. He leaned forward. I won't apologize for protecting you, but I will apologize for not telling you. That was wrong. The L word hung between us, massive and terrifying. He'd said falling, not fallen. Still in motion, still tentative. But the implication was clear. You love me? My voice came out small, uncertain. His expression softened. I'm getting there, faster than I intended. He reached for my hand again, and this time I let him take it. Does that scare you? Terrify me, I admitted. Everything about this terrifies me, but I can't seem to walk away. Good. He brought my hand to his lips. Because I'm not letting go without a fight. We left the restaurant shortly after, the tension between us morphing into something different, urgent, electric. In the car, his hand stayed on my thigh, possessive and claiming. At his apartment, we barely made it through the door before we were pulling at each other's clothes, desperate and needy. This time was different from the first, less careful, more raw. He was staking a claim, and I was letting him, meeting his intensity with my own. Afterward, breathless and tangled together, he held me like I might disappear. I need you to promise me something, he murmured into my hair. What? If anyone approaches you, anyone you don't know, anyone who seems too interested in our relationship, you tell me immediately. You don't engage, you don't try to handle it yourself. You call me. Lancelot. Promise me, Lila. His arms tightened. Please. The please did it. The vulnerability in his voice, the genuine fear beneath the command. I promise. Thank you. We fell asleep like that, wrapped around each other, and I tried not to think about what kind of world I was entering, what kind of dangers lurked in the shadows of his life. I tried not to think about what would happen when those shadows finally reached me. The warning signs were there. Looking back, I should have seen them. The black sedan that appeared too often on my route to set, the man in the coffee shop who watched me too closely, the flowers delivered to my trailer with no card attached. But I was caught up in the whirlwind of filming and falling deeper into Lancelot, and I dismissed them as paranoia, until I couldn't anymore. It happened on a Thursday, 6 weeks after that first storm-soaked night. I'd stayed late at the studio to rehearse a particularly challenging scene, and by the time I emerged, it was nearly 10. The parking lot was mostly empty, just a few crew vehicles, and my aging sedan looking pathetic under the harsh lights. I was halfway to my car when I heard footsteps behind me. Quick, purposeful. I turned to find a man I'd never seen before. Mid-40s, expensive suit, cold smile that didn't reach his eyes. Miss Chen, he said, his accent thick with Eastern European inflections. A moment of your time? Every instinct screamed danger. I thought of Lancelot's warning, his demand that I call him if anyone approached. My hand moved toward my phone. I don't think so, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I don't know you. But I know you. And more importantly, I know Lancelot Ashford. He took a step closer, and I saw the bulge under his jacket that could only be a weapon. My employer would like to speak with you. Just a conversation. I'm not going anywhere with you. I pulled out my phone, fingers trembling as I tried to unlock it. He moved fast, faster than I expected. His hand closed around my wrist, squeezing until I dropped the phone. It clattered to the pavement, the screen cracking. This can be easy or difficult, he said, his smile widening. Your choice. Before I could scream, before I could run, another figure appeared from the shadows. Stefano, Lancelot's security man, the one who'd been following me without my knowledge. Relief and anger warred in my chest. Let her go, Stefano said, his voice calm but his stance radiating danger. Now. The man holding my wrist looked between us, calculating. Then he released me, stepping back with his hands raised in mock surrender. "Just delivering a message," he said. "Tell Ashford that Dmitry Volkov sends his regards, and that debts come due eventually." He walked away, unhurried, disappearing into the darkness beyond the parking lot. Stefano immediately moved to my side, his hand steady on my elbow. "Are you hurt?" he asked. "No. Shaken, but fine." I bent to retrieve my phone, noting the spiderweb of cracks across the screen. Who was that? No one you need to worry about. He was already pulling out his own phone. But Mr. Ashford needs to know about this immediately. "Wait," I started, but he was already dialing. The conversation was brief, conducted in rapid Italian. When Stefano hung up, his expression was grim. "He's sending a car. You're to go directly to his apartment. No arguments." I should have protested. Should have insisted on going home, on maintaining some independence. But the adrenaline was crashing through my system, leaving me shaky and scared. So when the sleek black SUV arrived 5 minutes later, I got in without complaint. Lancelot was waiting when I arrived, pacing his apartment like a caged predator. The moment I walked in, he was there, hands framing my face, eyes scanning me for injuries. "You're all right?" he demanded. "He didn't hurt you?" "I'm fine. Just scared." I leaned into his touch, needing the solid presence of him. Who was he? Who's Dmitry Volkov? His jaw tightened, and he pulled me toward the couch, settling me there before pouring a generous measure of whiskey. "Drink this." I obeyed, the burn steadying me slightly. "Lancelot, tell me what's going on." He sat across from me, elbows on his knees, and for the first time since I'd met him, he looked truly worried. Not the controlled concern he'd shown before, but genuine fear. "Dmitry Volkov was my father's closest associate," he began. "When I started legitimizing operations, I gave everyone a choice, adapt or leave. Most chose to adapt. Dmitry chose to leave, taking his portion of the business to operate independently. I thought we had an understanding. Apparently not." "Apparently not," he agreed, his voice tight with barely controlled rage. "By approaching you, he's violated every agreement we had. He's declaring war." The word hung in the air, heavy and terrifying. War. Not a business dispute or a professional disagreement. War. "What does he want?" I asked. "What people like him always want. Power, territory, revenge for perceived slights." He stood, moving to the window. "When I took over, I dismantled much of my father's empire. The drug operations, the human trafficking, the weapons deals, all of it. Dmitry profited from those operations. He sees my reforms as weakness, as betrayal of my father's legacy. So he's using me to get to you. He's trying to." Lancelot turned back, his eyes hard. "And he's made a fatal mistake. Because now I have no choice but to respond. Definitively." The cold certainty in his voice sent ice through my veins. "What are you going to do?" "What I should have done years ago. Remove him as a threat." He crossed back to me, kneeling so we were eye level. "But first I need to know you're safe. You can't go back to your apartment. You can't continue your normal routine until this is resolved." "I have filming. I have a life, Lancelot. You have a target on your back." His hands found mine. "Please, Lila, stay here. Let me protect you properly. It will only be for a few days." "A few days? You're talking about going to war. That doesn't sound like a few days." "Wars between men like us are quick." His smile was sharp, dangerous. "We can't afford prolonged conflict. Too much attention, too many questions. It will be handled swiftly and permanently." I wanted to argue. wanted to insist I could take care of myself, that I didn't need his protection. But the memory of that man's hand on my wrist, the cold calculation in his eyes, made the protests die in my throat. "Okay," I said quietly. "I'll stay. But Lancelot, I need you to promise me something. Anything. Don't shut me out. Don't disappear into your dangerous world and leave me here worrying. I need to know what's happening, even if it's ugly." For a moment I thought he'd refuse. The habit of keeping his world separate, of protecting me through ignorance, was clearly strong. But then he nodded. "All right. I'll tell you what I can. When I can." He pulled me into his arms. "But some things, Lila, some things are better not knowing. For your protection and mine." I spent that night at his apartment, restless and unable to sleep despite the exhaustion pulling at me. Lancelot made calls in his study, his voice a low murmur through the closed door. Occasionally I heard him switch to Italian, the words harsh and commanding. Around 2 a.m., he emerged looking haggard. He found me on the couch, wrapped in a blanket, staring at nothing. "Come to bed," he said gently. "You need rest." "I can't sleep." "Then lie down with me anyway." He held out his hand. "Please." In his bedroom, I curled against his chest while he stroked my hair. The gesture was soothing, grounding me when everything felt like it was spinning out of control. "Tell me about your character," he murmured. "The one you're playing." It was such a mundane request, so at odds with everything happening, that I almost laughed. But I understood what he was doing, giving me something normal to focus on, pulling me back from the edge of panic. So I talked about Clara, my 1920s character, about her struggle between independence and security, between desire and safety. I talked until my voice grew hoarse, until the words became a meaningless stream of sound, until finally, impossibly, I drifted into uneasy sleep. I woke to find him gone, a note on the pillow beside me. "Had to handle some business. Stefano is outside your door. Don't leave without him. Back soon." Soon turned out to be subjective. By noon, I was pacing the apartment like a caged animal, fielding concerned calls from my director about missing rehearsal, texting Jen increasingly frantic updates. Stefano stood guard outside with the patience of a statue, refusing to tell me anything beyond, "Mr. Ashford will return when it's safe." Lancelot finally appeared around 4, and the sight of him stopped my pacing mid-stride. There was blood on his shirt, not much, but enough. His knuckles were bruised, and there was a cut above his eyebrow that hadn't been there this morning. "Oh my God," I breathed, rushing to him. "What happened?" "It's handled." He caught my hands before I could touch his face. "Dimitri and I had a conversation. He understands now that you're off limits." "A conversation that left you bleeding?" "A conversation that ensured your safety." He pulled me close despite my protests about the blood. "It's over, Lila. You can go back to your life, your routine. He won't bother you again." I pulled back to look at him properly. "What did you do?" "What was necessary?" His expression was shuttered, carefully blank. "Do you really want details?" Did I? I'd asked for honesty, demanded to be included. But faced with evidence of violence, with blood on his clothes and bruises on his hands, I wasn't sure I wanted to know. "Is he dead?" I asked instead. "No. But he wishes he was." Lancelot's voice was flat, emotionless. "I don't kill unless absolutely necessary, but I can be very persuasive about the consequences of crossing me. You tortured him. I negotiated, forcefully." He released me, moving to pour himself a drink with hands that trembled slightly. "He's leaving the country, tonight. He's transferring his remaining operations to associates who understand boundaries, and he's providing information on others who might consider testing me. Information you'll use to what? Threaten them too?" Information I'll use to maintain peace. He downed the whiskey in one swallow. This is my world, Lila. This is what it means to be with me. Sometimes peace requires violence. Sometimes protection requires intimidation. If you can't handle that reality, then we need to end this now. The ultimatum hung between us, sharp and unavoidable. This was the moment of truth. Could I love a man capable of torture? Could I build a life with someone who solved problems with violence? I thought about that first night, soaked and stranded on a dark road. About his confession in the gallery, his warnings about who he was. He'd never pretended to be anything other than dangerous. I'd chosen to stay anyway, chosen to fall for him despite knowing the cost. I'm not going anywhere, I said finally. But Lancelot, I need you to promise me something. What? That you'll never lie to me about who you are or what you've done. That you'll always give me the choice to stay or leave, knowing the full truth. I moved closer, reaching for his bruised hands. And that you'll try, really try, to find solutions that don't involve blood first. I can promise the first two, he said carefully. The third, I can promise to try. But there will be situations where violence is the only language people understand, where protecting what's mine requires force. Then we work with that. I brought his hands to my lips, kissing the bruised knuckles. But you have to let me in, Lancelot. All the way. No more protecting me through ignorance. If I'm going to be with you, I need to understand your world. Something shifted in his expression. Relief, maybe, or gratitude. He pulled me close, resting his forehead against mine. You're sure? Once you see everything, you can't unsee it. I'm sure. Over the next week, he kept his promise. He showed me the legitimate businesses, the real estate holdings, the import-export operations, the investments that generated most of his wealth. But he also showed me the shadows, the connections to city officials that weren't quite legal, the favors owed and collected, the network of loyalty built on both generosity and fear. He introduced me to Loretta properly, explaining that she wasn't just his housekeeper, but his most trusted advisor, someone who'd known his father and helped navigate the transition. He showed me the security systems that protected his properties, explained the protocols his people followed, made me understand the infrastructure required to maintain his empire. And slowly, piece by piece, I began to see the full picture. Not a monster, but not a hero either. A man born into darkness who was trying to step into light without abandoning the power that kept him safe. A complicated, contradictory person who was capable of both tenderness and brutality. Do you regret it? He asked one night, 3 weeks after the Dimitri incident. We were at the manor, my first time back since that storm-soaked night that had started everything. Getting involved with me? Seeing all of this? I looked around the gallery where we'd first had this conversation, at the Caravaggio that depicted violence and salvation intertwined. Sometimes, I admitted, when I think about how simple my life used to be, when I remember what it felt like to only worry about auditions and rent. That's fair. But then I think about who I was before I met you. Always fighting, always struggling, always feeling like I was reaching for something just out of grasp. I turned to him. You make me feel seen, Lancelot. Understood. Like I matter beyond what I can do or achieve. That's worth the complications. Even the dangerous ones? Even those. I moved into his arms, though I'd prefer if we could minimize the death threats going forward. He laughed, the sound rich and genuine. I'll see what I can do. Filming wrapped 2 weeks later, and the director pulled me aside on the last day. You've been different these past couple months, she observed. More grounded, more confident. Whatever's happening in your life, it's working. The performance is phenomenal. I thought about Lancelot, about everything we'd been through, and smiled. Thank you. I've just been learning to embrace complications. That night, he took me to the manor for a celebratory dinner. Loretta had outdone herself. A full Italian feast, complete with wine older than I was. We ate in the formal dining room, a space I'd never seen used, lit by hundreds of candles that turned everything golden. I have something for you, Lancelot said over dessert, producing a small velvet box that made my heart stutter. If that's what I think it is, it's not. He smiled, opening it to reveal a key. The manor. I want you to think of it as yours too. A place you can come whenever you need space, quiet, safety. I stared at the key, overwhelmed. Lancelot, I can't. You can. I'm not asking you to move in, not yet, but I want you to have the option. To know that what's mine is yours. He took my hand. I love you, Lila. I should have said it weeks ago, but I was afraid. Afraid you'd run. Afraid I'd scare you off, but I'm done being afraid. I love you too, I whispered, the words easy despite their weight. Even though you're impossible and controlling and sometimes terrifying, I love you. He kissed me then, deep and claiming, and I tasted promise in it. Not of perfection. We were too complicated for that. But of partnership, of choosing each other despite the difficulties, of building something real from unlikely circumstances. Later, wrapped in his arms in the bedroom we'd first shared during that storm, I felt the key pressing against my palm where I'd clutched it. A symbol of trust, of invitation, of a future I was still learning to imagine. What are you thinking? He murmured against my hair. That 6 months ago I broke down on a dark road, and my life changed completely. Regrets? No. I turned to look at him, but I reserve the right to be occasionally terrified. That's fair. He pulled me closer. I'm occasionally terrified too. Of losing you. Of my world touching you. Of not being enough to keep you. You're enough, I said firmly. Complicated, dangerous, impossible, but enough. We fell asleep like that, tangled together, and I dreamed of storms and sanctuaries, of darkness and light intertwined, of a love built on honesty and trust, even when the truth was ugly, of choosing to stay when leaving would have been safer. Outside, rain began to fall, gentle this time, not the furious deluge of that first night, just water washing the world clean, making everything new again. And somewhere in that sound, in that moment, I understood that we'd survived the storm. Not by avoiding it, but by walking through it together, changed but not broken. The future stretched ahead, uncertain and challenging. But with Lancelot's arms around me and his key in my hand, I wasn't afraid anymore. We would face whatever came next, the same way we'd faced everything so far, with brutal honesty, fierce loyalty, and a love that refused to be anything less than completely, dangerously real.